Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Good Thursday, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. It is the 3rd of March, and as always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information by using your NOAA Weather Radio. Marine VHF will have your forecast there. Giving us a call on the weather info line at 800-472-0391 or weather.gov/Alaska is always a good place to go. You can find information about the rest of what's going on in Alaska on Facebook, of course, or on Twitter. NWS Alaska with AKwx is your hashtag, or localize your information with NWS Juneau, NWS Anchorage, or NWS Fairbanks. On YouTube, you'll find your daily afternoon weather brief at NWS Anchorage. And of course, following this broadcast a little later in the evening, you can always find the complete show on Alaska Weather. Just look for AKwx. If you search in the YouTube bar there, that brought to you by our broadcast partners here at Alaska Public. Here's a look at the satellite picture, and well, this is kind of the Alaska Weather duct tape version today. Our satellite picture didn't come in, so like any good Alaskan, I would hope, we would look for something to fix it and get through the day, and here we go. This is our visible satellite picture, which we stole just right off our own webpage, and you can see there's not a whole lot going on. You can certainly see the snow on the Chugach Range and across the Alaska Range all the way down into the Aleutian Range and over Kodiak. And if you were in Kodiak today, you probably had a beautiful day. Looked like the pictures I saw around the island were just crystal clear blue skies. How often does that happen? I hope you enjoyed your day there. It looked like a good one. Out across southeast, you can see waves of moisture working in from east and southeast into the north and eastern Gulf. This next one that's working up past Haida Gwaii right now will probably bring in a little more rain and wind, especially across the outer coast as we go through the evening and overnight hours. So if you're worried about that across some of the outer coastal regions, pay a little bit closer attention to that. It could also bring some thunderstorms. So maybe a little more lively weather for coastal southeast as we head into tonight. You can see a lot of clear sky across the interior. A few more clouds, though, as you get up across the middle Yukon Valley and looking further northward toward the Brooks Range, and that's where the clear sky stops. A lot of low clouds socked in across the coastal plain. Clouds across the Bering Strait and into parts of Norton Sound there. And then you can see very clear conditions here just off the coast of the Yukon Delta. And another thing you don't see is ice. A lot of open water there, it looks like, and at least low concentration ice, and you'll see that in the sea ice coverage map here in just a little bit. Out across the west, also open water there north of St. Matthew. You can see a little bit of the white there right across the northern part of the island, and then a lot of cirrus clouds and some stratus across the Pribilovs and the southern Bering Sea. Here's the loop one more time, and again, if it moves, it's clouds. If it doesn't, it's ice or snow. And here you go, the visible satellite picture, one of the most beautiful things you can look at on a clear day over Alaska. Not a whole lot going on across most of our state. Fairly quiet weather. The North Slope, though, did have some snow and blowing snow across some of the northern regions. Now, this is a slightly different view of the satellite picture, and I'll give you a little bit of a quick satellite primer on what's going on here, since it's a little different than what we normally look at. Instead of kind of a black and white image, we colorized it for you here. As you get into the yellows and the reds, that's where we have a little bit of colder cloud tops. And what that usually tells the meteorologist is that's where a lot of the clouds are building up, maybe tall enough to produce precipitation or tall enough to produce some more active weather or wind. So we've got a little bit of cloud buildup here and colder cloud tops working through the central and northern parts of southeast. Another round of that building in from the south. Remember, this is the area we're watching for maybe some thunderstorm activity across the coastal parts of southeast, and it will certainly bring some more rain and wind to the outer coast of southeast. Not a whole lot of that seen across southwest and south central Alaska, and then you get into the southern Bering, and these are just colder clouds. We're not seeing a whole lot of vertical development with that, so we're not expecting the same kind of windy, rainy, and possibly stormy weather that we're seeing with the colder and yellow cloud tops here. So you got to know a little bit about what's going on with the weather before you pick the colors and decide what's happening with it. Out across the north, all the light blue, just kind of clouds, just general Average cloud cover there, garden variety stuff, and certainly some colder air showing up here. You'll notice that didn't move when we ran through the loop. So across southeast, the weather moving in from south and southeast right up the outer coast, and this is what's working up the outer coast that'll bring the rain and possibly some gusty winds there. Gales expected to develop tonight and into tomorrow, and some of that could spread into the coastal areas of south central Alaska, mainly outside of Prince William Sound. In the meantime, just gray sky for the central and eastern, even the western Aleutians there as we go into the next couple days. Watch the loop one more time. Here comes that wave working up the outer coast. Very dry air across south central and across southwest. And then when you combine the satellite image understanding from what we just saw with the visible satellite and what we just saw in the infrared satellite picture here, then you have a better understanding of what's going on there. So a lot of different tools in the shed that we can use at the National Weather Service. This is just another way to look at the satellite picture, and hopefully you enjoyed that there. Again, kind of a little duct tape version for the show tonight, just to get some satellite pictures on. I did manage to get a regular one on the surface map here, and with that we can plot our low pressure system across the eastern Gulf at 982 millibars. That's the next wave working up the south and eastern coast. A little bit of light rain there found across the southern parts of the inner channels. There's not a whole lot of moisture to work with, though. Each one of these waves desperately trying to find something in the atmosphere to wring out the rain there. And lately that has not been the case, and you can see the effect of all that drier air working across the Aleutian Range into the Bristol Bay region, even Nunivak Island. Remember, we saw that on the visible satellite loop a minute ago. There it is, all the way north, and you'll see on the sea ice coverage map here in just a minute how far and how entrenched those polynyas are across many parts of southeast. A pretty dry day across the Cook Inlet region and Prince William Sound, and most of the Copper River Basin as well. Once you get north of the range, there's a lot more clouds there, and we did see some areas of light snow and blowing snow as you get into the Kotzebue Sound region. As we go into Saturday and Sunday, watch the pressure gradient across the north coast once again. It looks like it's going to tighten up. So snow and blowing snow could become a little bit more of an issue to deal with as we get into Saturday and Sunday. For tonight, areas of light rain there across southeast. Some of that working northward could produce some gusty winds across the outer coast there as that 982 millibar low works northward. Pockets of rain across Prince William Sound and mainly the eastern Kenai Peninsula coastline and western Prince William Sound. Anything we see out across the central and western chain will predominantly be rain and snow mixed together. There could be a few areas of light snow west of St. Matthew into the Bering Strait and north of St. Lawrence Island and across the northern coast. If you're going to see any cloud cover across the interior, it will probably be closer to the Yukon Valley. Areas of light snow from Nunivak Island and just north and east of the Pribilofs all the way up the river. Most of what we'll see across southwest and the interior and southern parts of the interior especially will be generally dry air. It could be a great sky tomorrow and a beautiful day. Look for the winds to pick up a little bit more across the upper Yukon and the eastern Brooks Range. Every one of the waves working across the North Slope has the ability to pick up a few more clouds and maybe a few areas of light snow. Expect that around places like AKwx and Barrow tomorrow and around the Chukchi Seacoast. Once we get into Friday and Friday night, some of the winds will pick up even more, it looks like, across the North Slope. And because of that, we're going to start watching for areas of blowing snow all the way across the Arctic Ocean, the Chukchi Sea, down into the Bering Strait region, and probably as far south as St. Matthew. There's going to be some areas of snow showers working across coastal areas of the Bering. And then south of Nunivak Island and including the Pribilofs, a better chance for snow showers there. Again, notice that the pressure gradient's tightening up here. I mean, you see more of these black lines. That means there's more air that's got to rush through and kind of down the river. If you think of the wind as kind of a river type effect, these would be rapids forming here. Across Prince William Sound and out across Kodiak Island, probably a better chance of seeing at least a little bit of rain and snow developing as we head into the weekend. For southeast, a better chance for some showers there continuing through the region as we head through Saturday and into Sunday. You'll notice that moisture surge is kind of filling into more parts of the Gulf, and we'll likely see some snow showers across the Chugach Range and across the western Alaska Range. But as far as what's going on in Cook Inlet for the weekend, things still look fairly dry, so not a horribly good chance for precipitation at this point. Very dry weather continues. For southeast, 30s and 40s today. If you're in Sitka, it was 47 degrees. The capital city got close to 40 degrees this afternoon. 30s and 40s for Haines and Skagway, and all the way down toward the Dixon entrance for Ketchikan and Annette. And around South Central, we saw temps in the 30s and 40s as well. Seward was closer to 43, 33 in Anchorage, 39 around Talkeetna, 18 around the Matanuska Glacier. It was 22 around Golcana and Glen Allen. Kodiak today, sunshine and 44. Not too bad for February, or March, I guess it is now, right? March 3rd, 44 degrees in Kodiak. Okay. 19 in Eagle and 15 in Northway. Colder, of course, in Fairbanks at 19 degrees today. Certainly anything north of the Alaska Range. Still trying to hold on to some of that winter cold. And 19 in Fort Yukon. As you look up toward Tanana, it was 23. 14 for Arctic Village, single digits under the clouds and most of the North Slope today. 4 in Barrow, 5 in AKwx, 7 around Prudhoe Bay and Deadhorse, 4 around Wainwright and down the coast toward Point Lay. As you get toward Kivalina, it was in the teens today. Kotzebue was 16, 9 in Shishmaref. And for our friends in Nome, getting ready for some big activity, 30 degrees there. 30 in Galena, and it looked like about 26 around Stebbins. As you get out toward the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, temps were in the 20s and 30s. Everything south of Bethel, though, was substantially warmer. 12 around St. Lawrence Island. 6 in Tin City, close to 40 for St. Paul and St. George. The Bristol Bay region in the upper 30s today. The Alaska Peninsula generally saw temps in the 40s. Around Sand Point, it was 43. Cold Bay and False Pass in the low to mid 40s there. Pretty nice in Dutch Harbor and Unalaska today at 42. And then a lot more clouds, a little bit of a colder wind out of around Adak and Atka, and Chemiesh saw only 34 at 3 o'clock. Now, overnight low temperatures, of course, will be the coldest under the clouds, and with the wind, Barrow could feel considerably colder than 11 below, but that's a low temperature there tonight. 9 in Nome, Bristol Bay temps in the teens and 20s, 20 around Nunivak Island, 30 for St. Paul, just above freezing for most of the Alaska Peninsula, Unalaska and Dutch Harbor at 37. Southeast in the upper 30s to lower 40s. Even coastal areas will still be cooler, especially in the north like Yakutat at 28. As that wetter air fills in, your temperatures will come up in the next couple days. Teens and 20s for South Central, 33 around Kodiak and 1 below in Fairbanks tonight. High temps tomorrow expected to be back in the teens and 20s for the middle Tanana Valley. South Central looking at temps in the lower to mid 30s, and then further south closer to 40 in Kodiak. Upper 30s to mid 40s for a large part of southeast tomorrow. The Alaska Peninsula in the lower to mid 30s. Dutch Harbor and Unalaska just shy of 40, 30 in St. Paul, 14 in Nome, 2 in Shishmaref, and 3 below for a high temperature tomorrow in Barrow. That'll be your Friday weather. Flying weather now includes IFR conditions developing across the north coast, all the way from Point Barrow and just a little bit further west to Wainwright and then eastward toward Kaktovik tomorrow. Generally north and west toward Bettles and north of Tanana. Expect some time of IFR conditions there south of that MVFR, and that could include Fairbanks. South Central's looking pretty good. VFR conditions for the western Alaska Range all the way down to the Chugach. And then areas south of the Lynn Canal generally looking at MVFR conditions throughout the day. IFR conditions south of the central and western Aleutians, but you'll see hit and miss IFR, including parts of St. Lawrence Island and the Bering Strait communities as we get into tomorrow afternoon. Here's your pass conditions. Anaktuvik and Adigan Pass expect to see some improvement, but you will start around IFR through most of your Friday morning there. So again, watch for some improvement there. As you get down to Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, we do expect a pretty bluebird kind of day. VFR conditions there, and for Rainy Pass, probably a little bit of encroaching MVFR throughout the day. Watch for some changes around Windy Pass in the morning, but improvement is expected as we go throughout your day. Isabel Pass, MVFR conditions should be seen by the afternoon, so expect some better weather there. And for Mentasta Pass, holding at MVFR through a large part of your day. Teneda Pass right now, as you get back into that drier air, looks pretty good. Bluebird, VFR, and Portage Pass looks to be a nice start to the weekend. VFR if you're trying to get away from the Cook Inlet region. Chilkoot and White Pass, expect to see VFR conditions throughout most of your Friday. Now, as we look at freezing levels, you'll notice that cold air is really entrenched across the interior once again. But that's about where it stops. That warmer air is still holding on just right along the ice edge, really. So tomorrow morning, not a huge change out there. The surface, the freezing levels aloft are kind of stretching out across the eastern Gulf, levels anywhere from 2,000 to 4,000 feet across the southeast. And really not any big surges of warm air working into the interior, not just yet. Icing potential shows limited amounts of moisture, generally above 4,000 feet out in the Gulf, and then below 8,000 feet as you head into the lower and middle Yukon Valley there. Most of that light to isolated moderate at best. We've seen a few reports today. Most of those were pretty light. Here's the jet stream, and the superhighway of weather is well south of Alaska right now, and that's where it's been for a while. High pressures dropped out of eastern Siberia, and it's allowing some of that colder and drier air to work down the west coast and then swings it right back into eastern Russia. As far as what's going on in Alaska, conditions are fairly stable right now, and especially will be as long as that superhighway of really active weather stays out of reach of the 49th state. 9,000-foot winds show a northerly flow working down the west coast thanks to that jet stream position. You can see the easterlies working across the Aleutians, and the active weather again just out of reach down here. Low pressure sitting across the Gulf as it has almost all winter, it seems like, and that is keeping a little bit of that active weather focus across southeast. Wind speeds here anywhere from 15 to as strong as 50 knots around the Dixon entrance, slowing down considerably as they round the northern edge of that trough, working over the Brooks Range at 15 to 25 knots. Now look at the winds here across the north slope, anywhere from 30 to 40 knots at 3,000 feet. These winds may pick up as we head into Saturday and Sunday, so keep your eye on this chart there if you're worried about the winds across the north slope going into Saturday and Sunday. That certainly could have an effect on the visibility and the blowing and drifting of snow as we get into the next couple days. In the meantime, this map's not a whole lot different than the last one we saw at 9,000 feet. Wind speeds are a little faster here tomorrow morning around the Dixon entrance, Haida Gwaii, and for southern areas of the inner channels, that might be a little bit more of a concern for some low-level wind shear. North and easterly winds are zipping through the Bering Strait, but not too bad, 30 to 35 knots, and easterlies still working across most of the Bering, with winds fairly light as you move closer to the coastline around southwest Alaska, about 30 to 35 knots. Turbulence potential, we'll watch for that for sure across southeast. Make sure you check in with the Alaska Aviation Weather Unit as you get your flight plans ready tomorrow. Below 4,000 feet there, watch for some chop across the inner channels and especially along the coast tonight and into early tomorrow morning. Hit and miss chop across the upper Yukon Valley and across the Bering Strait below 4,000 feet from Tin City and Shishmaref all the way down toward Gamble and Savunga for your daytime tomorrow. That's a look at your aviation weather. I'll be back with the rest of your marine weather and a look at the sea ice chart here in just a few minutes. Stay tuned.
Jupiter at opposition.
Welcome to Stargazers. I'm Dean Regas, astronomer from the Cincinnati Observatory.
And I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Pla Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida. Next week is going to be a great time for observing Jupiter.
That's right, James. On Tuesday, March 8th, Jupiter will reach what astronomers call opposition. When Jupiter is at opposition, it's at its biggest and brightest for the entire year. And you can observe it all night long.
So let's give you a heads up on the 2016 opposition of Jupiter.
Jupiter is the largest of all the planets in our Sun's family and is number 5 from the Sun, our Earth being number 3. Earth is on average 93 million miles away from the Sun, whereas Jupiter's average distance is 484 million miles. Those are pretty big numbers, and because the planets are so far away from each other, astronomers don't often refer to the distances in the solar system using terrestrial units like miles or kilometers. That would be like measuring the distance from your house to the grocery store in inches or centimeters.
Instead, we use the average distance between the Earth and the Sun as our measuring stick. We call that distance an astronomical unit, or AU. So if we converted our units from miles to AUs, Earth is 1 astronomical unit from the Sun, and Jupiter on average is 5.2 astronomical units from the Sun.
As Jupiter and Earth orbit the Sun, they constantly vary their distance from each other. When Jupiter is at its farthest distance from us and is on the other side of the Sun as seen from Earth, it can be as far as 6.2 astronomical units away.
However, once every year, Earth and Jupiter line up on the same side of the Sun and are a whole 2 astronomical units closer to each other. Whenever this happens, we say Jupiter is at opposition, because Jupiter is opposite the Sun in the sky as seen from Earth.
And when Jupiter is at opposition, it is always at its closest, brightest, and best for viewing. Jupiter will be at opposition this year on Tuesday, March 8th, and only 4.4 astronomical units away. So this makes it great for viewing in a small telescope. As planets go, Jupiter is enormous. If Jupiter were hollow, you could fit over 1,000 Earths inside it, and it has over 120 times the surface area of the Earth. In more down-to-earth terms, if Jupiter were the size of a basketball, Earth would be about the size of a small marble.
Jupiter also spins very fast. Of all the planets in the solar system, Jupiter has the shortest day, lasting only 9.8 hours. Which means that when Jupiter rises at sunset during the winter months, when the sky is dark for more than 12 hours, in the course of only one night, you can actually see the entire surface of the planet.
This rapid spinning has caused Jupiter to take on an M&M shape. And because Jupiter is not a solid body, Jupiter's atmosphere actually spins faster at the equator than it does at the poles, making the clouds form the stripes we've come to know and love.
So let's go find Jupiter in the sky. Okay, we have our sky set up for Tuesday evening, March 8th at about an hour after sunset, your local time. If you look toward the east, you'll see the backwards question mark shaped pattern of stars that represent the head of Leo the lion. Directly below this pattern, and just to the right of the triangle of stars marking Leo's tail, you'll see a bright, non-twinkling light. That bright light is the planet Jupiter.
If you look at Jupiter through even a modest telescope, you'll see 4 tiny pinpoints of light which seem to extend out from Jupiter's equator. These are Jupiter's 4 largest moons, Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. Galileo first saw them through his telescope in 1610.
When I got my first telescope as a teenager, Jupiter was the first planet I looked at, and I was amazed at how the moons constantly change their position from night to night. Sometimes you'll see 3 on one side and 1 on the other, or you can see all 4 on the same side. It's definitely worth watching.
So check out Jupiter at its biggest and brightest next week.
And it's there for you to see if you
Keep looking up.
Here's a look at the sea ice edge now as analyzed by our Alaska Sea Ice Desk experts, and you can see their work anytime, every day, 7 days a week at weather.gov/anchorage/ice.php. Sometimes you'll find some really wonderful high-resolution image there. You'll always be able to find the sea surface temperature and interactive maps that look pretty similar to this. We color them and make them pretty for TV, but their maps, if you click on them, will tell you the sea ice concentration and give you the egg code if you're familiar looking at the ice edge there. So that's always available to check out and interrogate more. But in this form, if you remember when we looked at the visible satellite picture just a while ago, you could see that huge opening on the visible satellite. There's still some ice floating around in there because they're able to analyze this even more than our really broad view satellite pictures that we were checking out. And when you zoom into this, you'd still see some ice lingering across the coast, and there's still some shore-fast ice as well that tucks into many of the nooks and crannies around the Yukon Delta. But there certainly is a very large open area north and east of Nunivak Island, and south and west of the island, and north of St. Matthew there. So it's still a little bit of the ice that we saw in a visible satellite picture ourselves. And then out across the west, certainly lower concentrations there. Not expecting to see a whole lot of growth coming in the next couple days there due to the wind and the warmth. And Cook Inlet, for the most part, is pretty much wide open, according to our analysis today. So weather.gov/anchorage/ice.php. Here's a look at sea surface temperatures, and you can see that there's certainly some, at least, I won't say warm water, but warmer water compared to what's just under the ice. That continues to kind of pool up around St. Paul and stretch all the way out to the south and west of St. Matthew. So no big expectations for a lot of cold air coming right now. Look at southeast, and you can see northerlies coming down the Lynn Canal tomorrow. 30 knots, south and easterly winds inside of Clarence Strait at 25 knots with 5-foot seas. And then here's some of those faster winds we're talking about moving up the coast with a chance for some isolated thunderstorms tonight and maybe into tomorrow. 30 to 40 knots there. Seas running around 16 to 17 feet. The threat for storms will shift northward as we head into Saturday. Southeasterlies continue, but overall the winds are diminishing. Northerlies in the Lynn Canal at 30. And Clarence Strait to 30 knots with a 6-foot sea as we head into Saturday. For Friday in south central, northerlies coming down Cook Inlet 15 to 25, 25 west of the Barrens with an 8-foot sea, 7-foot seas inside of Shelikof Strait, and east and northeasterly winds coming around the north and western Gulf, 35 knots outside of Montague Island and into the Sound itself, 20 knots with a 4-foot sea from the north and east. Heading into Saturday, winds pick up a little bit more from the east, coming across the north and western Gulf there at 25 to 30 knots, 9 to 12-foot seas, 6-foot seas inside of Prince William Sound, so a little choppy if you're on the boat. Northerlies coming down Cook Inlet, 20 to 30, and inside of Shelikof Strait, a northeasterly wind at 25. On the other side of Kodiak Island, 20 knots with an 8-foot sea. Across the Alaska Peninsula, freezing spray could develop there from Castle Cape to Chignik, 25 knots with a 10-foot sea. Probably a heavier threat for freezing spray, though, on the Bering Sea side, of course. 5 to 11-foot seas coming down the coast. 25 to 30 knots there on Friday with that northerly wind. Not much of a change on Saturday. 25 knots all areas. 5 to 9-foot seas from Bristol Bay down the Bering Sea coast. And 8 to 9-foot seas there on the Pacific coast, again with that threat for freezing spray heading into the weekend. For the Aleutians, north and easterly winds for the central and eastern chain. All areas 25 to 30 knots, 11-foot seas on the Bering Sea coast, and anywhere from 12 to 14 on the Pacific coast with 13-foot seas out in the west. Northerly winds setting up a little bit more for central and eastern parts of the chain on Saturday. Seas diminish a little bit down to about 9 to 11-foot seas in many areas, and we'll hold on to the 11 to 13-foot seas from Kiska to Attu on Saturday. Northerlies coming out of the Bering Strait on Friday across St. Lawrence Island and over the ice, and then you'll see that open water there. 8-foot seas around St. Matthew, 10-foot seas around the Pribilovs, and 7-foot seas in the Kuskokwim Delta region. As we get into Saturday, we're sure enough about that open water staying put. We're forecasting seas up to 5 feet north of Nunivak Island. And around St. Matthew, we'll hold on to the northerlies with 35 knots and 10-foot seas and 9-foot seas around St. Paul and St. George for Saturday. Across the North Slope, easterly winds will be picking up in many areas there. For the Beaufort, 25 to 30 knots, more of a north and easterly wind coming down the Chukchi Seacoast at 25 to 30. Notice the winds still blowing in from the east on Saturday, and northeasterly winds coming down the Chukchi Sea. Also looking for some stronger winds around Cape Lisburne and Point Hope, with northerlies just outside of Kotzebue Sound on Saturday. Recapping tonight's weather, it's pretty quiet across south central and southwest. It is dry and it will be cool if the winds aren't blowing where you are. Look for areas of light snow and flurries, as well as some decreased visibility tonight with some pockets of fog across the north coast. Winds and waves and probably a little bit of thunder and lightning across the outer coast tonight and tomorrow for southeast. That's a better chance for you tomorrow with those stronger winds working up the outer coast and eventually into areas just outside of south central and Prince William Sound. Cook Inlet right now looks pretty dry heading into the weekend, but look for some mountain snow showers. Enjoy your weekend. Thanks for watching.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Support comes from the University of Alaska College Savings Plan, helping you and your child save for college every step of the way, from diapers to diploma. More information at uacollegesavings.com.